More details are emerging regarding what really happened to Stephen tWitch Boss, and that situation is looking more suspect than ever.
Stephen was an incredible father, an incredible husband, and we shared in something so special. Like, our love was so real and it was so loud and beautiful. I tell people, like, at our house, it was like it was a choreographed dance. It was a beautiful routine, and everyone molded together, and there was so much laughter and love and so many amazing memories created. And he was a family man, and he loved taking care of everyone and protecting everyone, and you can still feel that love in our home. I still feel like I'm like the rest of the world, where I'm still shocked. No one's ready for that moment, and there's no one that saw this coming. No one.
The toxicology reports are finally in, and the just released autopsy report reveals that there were no substances or alcohol in his system. And Stephen's wife had apparently informed police that not only were there no marital or financial issues, but according to her knowledge, Stephen did not suffer mental health problems or have a history of thoughts or ideation. Does this remind anyone of Anne Heche's toxicology report that was released on December 6th, 2022, almost 4 months after her passing, which showed she was not impaired by any substances at the time of her accident, and the substances that were found in her system had been administered by the hospital for pain relief? Last December 13th, 2022, Stephen tWitch Boss, DJ, co-host, and executive producer of The Ellen Show, was found in a motel room less than a 15-minute walk from his home, only a few hours after his wife, Allison Holker, had rushed into an LAPD station, frantic because Stephen had left home the previous morning without his car and had not returned. Something that was not like him at all. Allison told police that she knew something was terribly wrong because he left their house without notice and there was no argument or issue, and he stopped all communication and wouldn't answer any of her calls. Allison was so insistent on how odd Stephen's behavior was that police accompanied her back to the family's home and performed a brief check around the property for any video or clues as to where he'd gone. Whatever Allison told police that Tuesday morning must have been alarming to them as well, because sources also told TMZ that officers considered listing Stephen as a critical missing persons case, which according to one city in Los Angeles County can include if the missing person is mentally impaired to the extent that they are unable to care for themselves or is an immediate danger to their own safety or the safety of others, if the missing person is in critical need of medical attention, if the missing person has no pattern of running away or disappearing, if the missing person is the victim of a kidnapping or parental abduction, or if the missing person is a victim of a crime or foul play. But before police could make that decision, they received a call around 11 a.m. that same morning reporting a shooting at a nearby motel, the Oak Tree Inn, which was less than a mile away from Stephen's Encino home. When police arrived at the scene, the paramedics had already pronounced him gone at around 11:25 a.m. According to hotel staff, Stephen had called the hotel to check for availabilities the previous morning around 9:20 a.m. And then he showed up to check in about an hour later that Monday morning at 10:30 a.m., 24 hours before Allison rushed frantically to an LAPD police station. The manager of the hotel stated that Stephen appeared to be completely normal, didn't appear to be in any sort of distress, and wasn't visibly upset about anything. He was calm when he checked in on his own with just one small bag, using his real name to book a one-night stay that Monday morning. He walked up to his room 249 and never came out. The newly released autopsy report states that the next day, after Stephen missed checkout, a maid went to his room around 11:10 a.m. and after knocking repeatedly on the door with no response, entered room 249 and saw Stephen's clothes neatly folded and stacked on the table with a bag containing various notebooks and a laptop. The maid then went to the bathroom where she found Stephen in a pool of blood, laying unresponsive in the shower with just a white towel around his shoulders and apparent GS wound to his head. When later interviewed, motel staff said they saw no visible S note in the room. And although several guests were staying at the motel at the same time as Stephen, no one heard any GS sound, which led the manager to speculate that perhaps the fatal injury had occurred Monday afternoon during their busiest time. Investigators confiscated Stephen's bag and belongings from the motel room and determined that Stephen took an Uber from his house to the motel that Monday morning and switched his phone to airplane mode so no one could reach or track him. They viewed the scene and concluded that Stephen tWitch Boss passed from a self-inflicted GS wound to the head and that there were no signs of foul play, and handed the case over to the coroner. And on Wednesday evening, December 14th, the very next day, the coroner's autopsy report stated that 40-year-old Stephen tWitch Boss, who had just celebrated his 9th wedding anniversary on December 10th, just 3 days prior to being found in that motel room, was gone by a self-inflicted GS wound to the head, and that the case was closed. It didn't matter that at the time the toxicology test had not been run, or that at that particular time there was still no indication of an S note. For all intents and purposes, the investigation was over, declared self-inflicted, and the recently released autopsy report reiterated that there were no additional wounds, substances, or other considerations in evaluating Stephen's passing. It took another 2 days before it was reported that an S note was found, and on December 16th, media outlets around the world began carrying the same story about a very vague note being recovered in which Stephen supposedly wrote ambiguously about past struggles and challenges. They gave no hints as to where the note was found, whether it was handwritten, typed on a cell phone or laptop, or in one of the notebooks recovered at the scene. And with the results of the toxicology report finally being released 5 months later, it raises even more questions. How could a case go from almost being declared a critical missing persons case to closed due to supposed self-inflicted GS wound in just 24 hours? Without results from a toxicology report, without an S note being found, and without the person ever having hinted at having those types of concerns to those closest to him. A man whose mantra was never give up. Why would a man who planned for the success of his family deliberately leave them without creating a will? Where did the G come from? And why did no one hear a thing? Why was he unclothed with just a towel around his neck? The only thing that's clear about this case is the fact that it was closed way too soon, with too many unanswered questions. leaving most people in disbelief, and some loved ones, like Stephen's grandfather, questioning what really happened to Stephen Twitch Boss.